Hi, I'm Thann Bennett. Thank you for listening to The Equipped. Faith Radio podcasts are only possible because of your support. Thank you for giving and for sharing with a friend. The goal of your life should be to gaze. Hey everyone, I'm Thann Bennett. Welcome into The Equipped. I am going to tell you what I mean by that statement. The goal of your life should be to gaze. When we come to the end of our time together and we are focused on the beautiful. But before we get to the beautiful, we're going to talk about headline news, including smoke and tariffs. Then there was Spain, and the seventh time is a charm. If you are a regular listener or a subscriber to the Equipped newsletter, you know why we do this. We consider headline news, we consider divisive stories, but we bracket that consideration through the lens of the true and the beautiful. And so when we get to the beautiful, we're going to be talking about the goal of your life being to gaze. But we are going to start, as we always do, by standing on truth. And if this is unusual to you, this is what we do as the Equipped community. We call it viewing all things in our world through the lens of the true and the beautiful. If you want to learn more, you can hop on over to theequippednewsletter.com. The newsletter content, the newsletter version of this broadcast is absolutely free. You can add your email address to subscribe to that. That content forms the backbone of this conversation. But we're going to start, as we always do, by standing on truth. And I want to ask you a question this week. What is it that you see first? Is it grace and gift, or is it cost and sacrifice? That is right now on The True. I look at my life and I see more grace than cost, more gift than sacrifice. That was the proclamation of the speaker this weekend at church. It was actually a congregant turned missionary to Jordan. And this statement was so striking to me because it was not what I saw when I looked at her life. She said that she saw more grace than cost and more gift than sacrifice when she looked at her life. But I'm telling you, when I looked at her life, from my perspective, from my seat, I saw first abundant cost and sacrifice. I saw a tremendous relinquishing of comfort and abundance and ease and the giving up of first world status and looking across the wide sweep of human civilization and culture. I saw amazing comfort in her life that she gave up. I saw the loss of personal safety and protection. I saw the limiting of ambition and acclaim and even potential, if I'm being honest with you. I saw tremendous sacrifice. Now, let me say, I saw a very desirable thing as well. I saw great good, but I saw the humble reality of dying to self for the gain of others. I saw that dying to self first. That was the thing that I saw first in her life. I knew it was immensely good, and yet I was so cognizant of the fact that it was also immensely costly. Now, I knew that what she was saying was true. But here's the distinction I really want us to think about today, because it makes all the difference in the world. What I saw, what my mind's eye fixated on the most and first, was the cost and the sacrifice. When she looked at her life, she saw more grace and gift than cost and sacrifice. But I saw first cost and sacrifice. And it leads me to ask you this question today. Do you have eyes to see first the grace and the gift, or do you first notice the cost and the sacrifice? As I was personally reflecting on this question, I was rather humbled to admit that I see first the cost and the sacrifice. And here's the thing. Both of these things, both sides of this equation are always present. And that contemplation led me back to the very familiar story of Peter walking on the water in Matthew 14. And both Jesus and the waves are present and very real and very tangible in that story. It's not as though Jesus was asking Peter to say which one is real and which one is fake. You need to acknowledge one and deny the other, and that's going to let you walk on the water to me. No, that was not at all the case. Both were real. Jesus was real, and he was walking on the water, and the waves were real, and without a miraculous intervention, they would cause Peter to sink. The thing that made the difference is what Peter chose to look at. It was a matter of what he saw. And Peter has a mixed record on this, as I confess to you, I do when I'm considering these things in my life. Peter was called by Jesus, and he has this great faith. His eyes are on Jesus. He gets out of the water, and he begins to walk to Jesus. And I would tell you, I think it's very clear that the mere act of stepping out of the boat confirms that Peter was in fact fixated on Jesus. That is the only way in this story that he would be able to make the decision to step out of the boat. It was the fact that he saw Jesus as bigger than the storm around him. He passed this test. He was looking at Jesus. He saw Jesus first, and he saw Jesus as bigger than the waves. But a moment or two later, you know what happens. And Matthew 14:30 says it this way. It says it was when Peter, quote, saw the wind. It was when his gaze shifted from Jesus to the cost and the sacrifice and the danger around him. That was the moment that he became afraid and he began to sink. Now, Jesus, you know this story, Jesus was quick to rescue Peter. But that illustration and those two moments separated by mere seconds brings us back to our question. When both great grace and great cost are present, are you choosing to see the grace above the cost? This is a very simple and obvious principle, and I actually want to avoid any embellishing or extra addition to it, but it also can be a very, very difficult one to walk out. We are to fix our eyes on Jesus. That's the terminology in Hebrews 12:2. We are to choose to see him and him alone. But I want to be very clear about this today and this week because this is so important as we walk out our lives in a tangible world. It is not that cost and sacrifice are not present. They are. I can assure you with this congregant turned missionary, all of the cost and sacrifice that I saw in her life, she knows is there as well. She has walked through them. It is not that they are not real, they are, but it is that where sin increases, grace increases all the more. That's the terminology of Romans 5:20. But here's the thing, it's all intermingled. Jesus is calling us to step on the water, and he's calling us to step on the water while the wind and the waves rage. Grace and gift, cost and sacrifice, it is all intermingled together. And my question for you this week is, which one will you choose to see? Because here's the truth. The one you choose to see is the one that will loom large in your life. More grace than cost, more gift than sacrifice. I assure you, my friend, that is true in your life as well. And I want to encourage you to choose to see the grace and the gift more than the cost and the sacrifice. Let's hold that at the forefront of our mind as we turn our attention now to headline news. We're going to start with a story that I'm calling Smoke and Tariffs. And as I'm sure you can guess, this is a story about the relationship between the United States and Canada. That relationship is being tested on these two issues, the issue of smoke and tariffs. On the first issue, the issue of smoke, smoke from the raging Canadian wildfires was covering large portions of the United States this week. It certainly was covering Washington, Washington, D.C., where our family lives. Maybe it was covering your area as well. Cities like Chicago and New York City were also in the bullseye and significantly impacted. There were skylines that were shrouded. There was air quality that was significantly reduced, and there were a lot of cancellations of outdoor events. The second story impacting the relationship between the United States and Canada is about the new 50% tariffs that U.S. President Donald Trump has levied on Canadian goods. It is set to go into effect next month. Some of the goods that are covered include automobiles, dairy products, and alcohol. I have linked in the newsletter version of the Equipped to the entire fact sheet from the White House that explains the other goods that are covered as well. Now, the White House says that Canada has engaged in discriminatory trade practices, and here's the quote from the U.S. president. It says, "Only two countries have chosen to retaliate against President Trump's tariffs rather than negotiate a deal with the United States: the People's Republic of China and Canada." So clearly, the White House is looking to gain the upper hand by lumping Canada in with China. Now, as we zoom out and consider how we as the Equipped family should respond and interact with this story, clearly these are two factors that are impacting the relationship between the United States and her neighbors to the north, and they are separate issues, but they're also overlapping. President Trump is blaming Canada for the economic impact on the United States caused by the wildfires. He's also blaming them for the health hazard that it may pose for millions of Americans. And it appears to have exacerbated and made worse the relationship between the two countries on economic issues and these tariffs. These tariffs are going to go into effect on August 19th unless a deal can be reached beforehand. Now, I also think that the smoke issue, the smoky haze, it's an example of an issue that the Equipped community should be mobilizing into. You know, I think we've talked about this before in the instance of natural disasters, but if you haven't done this already, you should really have a list of those in your immediate community, your immediate area, that might benefit from a check-in when there's a threat of a storm or a power outage or, a snowstorm or, in this case, a smoky haze. Who might benefit from a check-in to just make sure that they have everything that they need if it is difficult to get out and about? And I would tell you that as we have exercised this as a family, oftentimes it's just the reaching out. It's just the reassurance of knowing that they are not alone. That in and of itself goes a long way to easing the burden of worry. So have you done that? Have you made a list of those in your area that you can check out to via text or a quick phone call when these situations arrive? Now, as it relates to the tariffs, many of these previous tariff announcements with other countries, they actually have never gone into effect because they've been rescinded after negotiations lead to an agreement. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case with Canada or not, and if it's not, if these tariffs go into effect, anything that you purchase that originates in Canada is going to go up in price. That's really just the bottom line reality here. But I think our community should use it as an opportunity to become even more aware of and even more sensitive to those who might have an increase in price like that impact them on a foundational survival level. Who in your community might need a little bit more of assistance should this economic pressure, should this squeeze actually become a reality? Finally, I just think that the smoke issue it brought to mind Proverbs 10:26 for me, and I think it's worth focusing on this today. It's Scripture's warning against slothfulness. You might think, well, why does the smoke issue from Canada? How does that relate to slothfulness? Well, here's what Proverbs 10:26 says: "As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, how irritating is that?" You've been around a campfire before, and you can't, no matter where you go around the campfire, the smoke is chasing you, right? And it's burning your eyes. Vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so are sluggards to those who send them. Equipped family, let's not be sluggards. Whether it's to our employers, our community, our families, let's be servants so that we are not an irritant to those around us. It's a very practical reminder, but one straight from the pages of Scripture. Proverbs 10:26, "As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so are sluggards to those who send them." Hi, Faith Radio family. Thann Bennett here with a special invitation for you. So much in our world today is screaming for us to be consumed by fear and division and brokenness. But the promise of the gospel means that our foundation is secure. We should live not from a place of fear, but instead our lives should be marked with power and with love and with sound minds. And so every week I'm sending out the Equipped newsletter. Every issue opens with truth from God's Word. From that vantage point of truth, we look at a handful of current events in our world. We do it not to simply consume information, but we do it looking for opportunities for the gospel of Jesus Christ to inject love and healing and redemption into those who need it. We close every issue with a simple reminder of something that is beautiful in our world. I want to invite you to join our community. You can sign up at theequippednewsletter.com. That'll trigger an email back to you. Just click to confirm. Again, it's theequippednewsletter.com. I'll see you there. And then there was Spain. Spain is the World Cup champion after defeating Argentina in the championship game 1-0. They won on a goal in extra time on Sunday. And get this, the win extends Spain's international unbeaten streak to a record 38 games. 29 of those are wins, 9 of them are ties. It's an all-time record, and it secures them their second World Cup title. Now, on the other side of the ball, the match might have been the final match for Argentina legend Lionel Messi and France star Kylian Mbappe. He won the Golden Boot for the most goals scored in the tournament. He scored twice in the third-place game, which was a wild game, 10 goals, 6-4 in the third-place game. It brought his total tournament tally of goals to 10, and so he won the Golden Boot. But Spain is the champion. And I would tell you, just coming off of this tournament, I'm not a huge soccer fan, but boy, do I enjoy the World Cup. The World Cup is so much fun. I think it's unrivaled in many, many ways in terms of sporting events. Every 4 years, the world comes together. This is the world's most popular sport, and since it's being played on an international level, all the countries of the world that qualify are competing for national pride. Now, this year, that tournament, it came to North America, my homeland. The United States of America has also had games in Canada and Mexico, and it highlighted the world's most popular sport in a place where it is not the biggest sport in this country. However, we are the biggest economic market in the world, and so it created a very fascinating for me environment in which to watch the passions of the world come to the place where there is a place this prosperous, to be very upfront about it. And while many Americans are not avid soccer fans, the sport is growing in this country. I think many more became soccer fans for the 6 weeks of this tournament. Now, we will see how much of that has staying power in the weeks ahead. We at the Equipped family, we've been having this regular conversation about how to use the World Cup to reach the nations for Jesus as they have been coming to us, those of us that live in the United States. But now, as those teams and their fans, as they return to their home countries, I think we need to shift our mindset a little bit to reflect on how all of those various nationalities as they came to us, letting those inform us about the ways that we should carry out the call to make disciples of all nations. I think we can also take a moment to reflect on the beauty of God's creation, especially the human creation, the pinnacle of creation in mankind. It's been on display during the World Cup. The different cultures, the different customs, the different styles and foods and fashions have been right here in the United States. And all manner of creation, all manner of people, all manner of cultures have been mixed together beautifully in a way that punctuates the truth that God has made all of us in His image and called us back to His side. And so as all of those teams and fans go back to their nation, let's keep that conversation that we've had over these last 6 weeks going and consider how can we go and make disciples of all nations. Andy Burnham is the newly installed Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and I'm calling this story Seventh Time is a Charm because he is the seventh person to hold this position in just the last 10 years. He's the seventh to hold the position after his predecessor, Keir Starmer, formally resigned the post after just 2 years of holding it. Prime Minister Burnham also assumes the leadership of the Labour Party, which is the governing party in the United Kingdom, and he will attempt to do what none of his previous 6 predecessors have been able to do. He will try to hold on to and maintain a governing consensus. As we think about how to consider this story, I just start with the fact that governments of men come and go. It can be so very easy to put our trust in governments of men, but they are just so very fleeting. They come and go, but the kingdom of God reigns forever. I've included a number of scriptural references in the newsletter version of the Equipped to support that biblical fact. It's woven all throughout Scripture, but it's an important one for us to remember today. And it's a familiar truth, but it's one that this story really drives home. Now, 7 leaders of a country, especially a Western country like the United Kingdom in 10 years, it's an extreme example, right? But the truth is that even the longest tenured national leaders, even the authoritarian dictators that are in office until they die, and oftentimes someone related to them takes over, even those situations are but the blink of an eye against the long story of eternity. James 4:14 says it this way. It says, "What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." It's so very tempting to view that truth as limiting, but in reality, my friends, this is liberating. The God of the universe, the God of forever, the God who made it all and commands it all, He's invited you into His forever story. Yes, your time on earth is short for now, but He's making all things new. Revelation 21:5. And there is nothing that you can do to be separated from His love. Romans 8:38 and 39. So whether you feel lowly and of no significance, or whether you are temporarily assigned to the highest position in the land, your mission on earth is the same. It is to glorify the God in heaven. Isaiah 43:21. So the pressure is off. You don't have to hold a governing consensus together. Andy Burnham does, but you do not. You do not have to hold a governing consensus together. Jesus finished that work on the cross, and now you get to walk in the freedom that His sacrifice earned. So it's time for the beautiful, and the image provided by my wife, Brooke, this week is right in the vein of what I often tell you are my favorite pictures that she does. Very often there's something unusual, something out of place, sometimes even something that might seem a little bit gross if it wasn't put in such a beautiful way by her depiction. This week is one of those instances, and for those of you who are not observing it, for purposes of this illustration, I feel like I need to tell you what it is. There's a frog in the midst of a beautiful arrangement of flowers this week, totally out of place. Totally, it would seem like it's accidental, but yet this is actually how nature presents itself. The beauty of nature, something as beautiful of a flower. Maybe there's something slimy or a little off in the middle of that nature. Now, I particularly think there's something beautiful about the frog as well, but it definitely appears out of place in this picture. But I think it's a perfect illustration of Psalm 27:4. This is what it says: "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek Him in His temple." There's no doubt this frog is looking around and gazing at a scene much more beautiful than itself. And that would be my encouragement to you this week as well. Stop and look around. Do you see it? The beauty of the Lord is all around you. There's such a freedom in letting go of worry about who you are and simply instead gazing upon the beauty of God. Let's make that our goal this week. Our goal should be to gaze. That is our one thing. I'm Thann Bennett. This has been The Equipped. I am always so grateful to have these conversations with you, and I will talk to you again next time. Thank you for listening to this conversation from The Equipped. These conversations are available because of your support. Become a supporter now at myfaithradio.com. And please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and share it with friends so together we can stay informed and be equipped to serve.